So we are back in session from break, and we're going to move to agenda item number 4, which is discuss and potentially take action on the request for a waiver of TCOLE Rule 217.1, which is minimum standards for enrollment and initial licensure. And today we have with us from the Austin Police Department, Chief Joseph Chacon and Officer Nathan Conche, and there's also some additional speakers. I'm going to initially ask Chief Chacon to come up and speak with us in just a moment, and also Officer Conche. And for the speakers, what we'll do after they get done speaking, I'll go ahead and ask each of you to come up individually and make any comments or statements that you may have. Okay? So we'll start with Executive Director Beecham.
Commissioners and attendees, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll give you a brief overview of, for everyone's benefit, of the waiver process and the rule which is being considered here today. The Chief Administrator waiver process under TCOLE rules allows a Chief Administrator to apply to the Commission for the approval for the waiver of a specific minimum standards, whether it has to do with criminal disposition qualification, age, education, of all of these 217.1 requirements that could be waived are subject to the waiver requirement process. Specifically, in the context of a criminal disposition that would otherwise be disqualifying, a Class A misdemeanor is an otherwise permanent disqualifier under 217.1, the minimum standards that are set forth for all enrollment and licensing standards is a permanent disqualifier, and a Class B misdemeanor is a 10-year disqualifier after the date of judgment or disposition. However, with a waiver requested by the Chief Administrator, both of those, anything above a Class B, can be waived within 5 years of the disposition date. The specific rule, for reference sake, is Rule 211.30, Chief Administrator responsibility for Class A and B waivers. There's a list of requirements for which a Chief Administrator must meet procedurally and substance information that must be submitted to the Commissioners for their consideration. The Chief Administrator must show up along with the person for which they are requesting the waiver on behalf of. In this particular case, which the Commissioners are considering today, there was a cancellation action initiated, and this waiver that's been submitted by Chief Chacon is based on that cancellation action and requesting a waiver of a previous criminal disposition.
Chief Chacon, let me go ahead and first thank you and your team for being here this morning and traveling down from Austin. We appreciate you being here, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Chair, Commissioners, good morning. My name is Joseph Chacon. I'm the Chief of Police in Austin. I've been the Chief for about a year and a half now. I've been in law enforcement. This is my 31st year. And I give you that as a kind of backdrop in my experience, my ability to have been around police officers during that time, and as we all do, judging character, judging performance of those officers over that time as a backdrop to the comments that I'm going to provide you today. As we all know today, it's a difficult time to be a police officer, and the world really changed in 2020 with the George Floyd incident. Recruiting and retention, which I've already heard being discussed, is as difficult as it has ever been. At the Austin Police Department, and I know at other departments across the state, applications are down. At APD, they're down to about 1/3 of our normal rate of applications. And in order to maintain the high standards of the profession, only about 5 to 8% of applicants actually make it into the academy. Today, more than ever, every single officer counts. Finding people with the heart of a servant who want to do this work and do it the right way is harder than it's ever been. As law enforcement leaders, we have an obligation not only to make sure we're keeping the public safe, but importantly, we're taking care of our people as well. And when we recognize quality personnel, we must do all we can to support them, and that's why I submitted for the waiver and why I'm here today. I'm in front of you because Officer Nathan Conche has been with the Austin Police Department since August of 2013. Prior to joining APD, he had a very successful military career, serving honorably for 20 years in the U.S. Navy, rising to the rank of Senior Chief Petty Officer. He obtained a top secret clearance during that time and was trusted with highly classified information and highly sensitive equipment. After being honorably discharged, he continued his life of public service, joining the Austin Police Department and working as a patrol officer, most recently in our downtown entertainment district. He helps direct persons that are downtown safely within the district and also conducts law enforcement efforts when necessary, including breaking up fights, seizing illegally owned and illegally possessed firearms, and making arrests. Importantly, he is helping to keep our community safe. He holds a number of different certifications with our department. He's a certified bilingual Spanish speaker. He's also a mental health officer, one of our designated officers that we call in times for crisis intervention. He has been certified on the AR-15 and is a bike mechanic, as he does ride bicycles downtown, and is part of our bicycle public order team, which we use extensively for protest events in Austin and used extensively during the George Floyd protests. He serves with pride and humility, and that is a rare trait, and one that we should celebrate. Now, like all of us, he has made his mistakes, and the one at issue today occurred mere days after turning 17, when he made the absolute wrong decision to burglarize a vehicle. It's regrettable, but a mistake made when he was very young. He has owned that mistake, received a deferred adjudication, and successfully completed its terms. He then went on to serve his country and our community in Austin for a combined 29 years. Shortly after this happened, of course, the state of Texas downgraded this offense from felony status, recognizing that was probably not the most appropriate level for that offense. Commissioners, I'm asking today for your discretion and your grace to allow Officer Conche to retain his TCOLE license through waiver. I believe that he has demonstrated the heart, the desire, the courage, and the character to be a police officer. He has no internal affairs history with the Austin Police Department, and it's the only department that he's served since ending his military career. He is the definition of a community policing officer. This has been attested to, and I know you will hear it from the folks who have signed up, who he works with and he works for, that will testify to his character and his abilities as a police officer. Most importantly, he truly wishes to continue to serve, which again is rare in these days of policing. I thank you for your time. I'm glad to take any questions or to turn the mic over.
Officer Conche, would you like to address the commission?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a little nervous here after hearing that. I've already been introduced, but I'm just make it brief. My name's Nathan Eli Conche. I'm 50 years old. Been with the Austin Police Department a little over 9 years as a senior patrol officer. Married 29 years, happily married. Got 3 children. I got a 30-year-old son who's about 2 weeks away from graduating the Naval Officer Candidate School and going to flight school, become a naval pilot. I have a 26-year-old daughter who is in college, getting ready to transfer to UTSA, and she is a director at the Santa Rosa Children's Hospital in San Antonio, in downtown. And I have a 15-year-old son who is just starting high school. He's a baseball athlete. Take a lot of pride. I'm a family guy, and love my family, and APD is part of my family, and I just would love to continue to be part of it and be part of this brotherhood and being a peace officer in the state of Texas. Thank you.
I know that we have some additional speakers for my colleagues. We have four additional speakers. So versus asking all of you to come and stand up, I will ask the commissioners if they have any questions of the chief or Officer Conche at this time. Oh, Commissioner.
I'm sorry, we're really struggling to understand what you're saying. Not because you're not speaking English, but the
The sound system
the
is
sound, yeah,
very difficult.
We didn't catch it, so I hope you guys heard and can understand our directions, but
Okay, let me speak this way, and then I'll speak this way. We have 4 speakers. So what I'd like to do, since they're already standing, is go ahead, and they're already up at the mic, is we'll go ahead and ask for questions from the commissioners for the chief or Officer Conche. At this time, again, we have 4 speakers. If any of you have questions for Officer Conche or Chief Chacon, we'll go ahead and ask that. I will say that there will be an opportunity, even after we hear the additional speakers, there still may be questions for one or both of you. So,
yeah, so I would say if the 4 individuals who want to speak in his behalf could come up, do that, and then
Okay.
obviously for the chief and Officer Concha to stand by for questions after that's completed.
okay, we can absolutely do that too. So the first speaker would be Joe Swan, and I'm sorry, I cannot read the last name. Christopher Jusoki would also be waiting. So if you would please introduce yourselves with your name and in what capacity you are here, that would be appreciated.
Thank you for allowing us to address you all today, Commissioners. I'm Detective Joe Swan. I've been with the Austin Police Department for 20 years. I'm the Vice President of the Austin Police Association. We're here under some highly unusual circumstances. As the documents before you illustrate, Officer Conche was arrested when he was 17 years old. He was a junior in high school. But I just want to make 2 points, and I'm going to make it quick since we have so many speakers and I respect everyone's time. I was the senior firearms and tactics instructor at the Austin Police Academy when he came through, or one of. And I picked Officer Conche out, or cadet at the time, and I said, man, you're old. What are you doing? You retired from the Navy. Why are you here? But what I noticed, even though he was old, much older than everyone else in his class, he was out working everybody in the room. So I picked him up in San Antonio on the way to Austin. He lives in San Antonio, drives to Austin every day coming to work. Again, I don't know what he's thinking, but he does. I respect that. And I said, man, what do you do downtown? And he said, man, my main thing is I'm a mental health officer. I want to help the community. I want to help these people. I don't think it's a secret to anyone in this room. We have a huge transient population mental health crisis in Austin, Texas. He enjoys those calls. He's the one that wants to help those people. The second point I'll make is, as one of his instructors, is I've trained all over the country. Alert, CSAT out in Nacogdoches, about over 30 states. But this guy, this officer, is the epitome of what we need as a Texas peace officer. He makes us proud because he truly cares. The second thing I'll say is the entire way here, I'm just going to be honest with you, he wouldn't stop talking about how excited he is to try to get back to work. We don't have that in law enforcement right now. So we're respectfully requesting for the commission to approve the waiver submitted by APD Chief Chacon on Nathan Conche's behalf, and I appreciate all your time. I'm confident that the commission will make the common sense and right decision.
We'll next hear from Christopher and then Al Garibay.
Good morning, Honorable Commissioners. I'm Lieutenant Christopher TCOLE. I work for the Austin Police Department as well. I've been with the department about 16 years. I've known Nate Conche for 7 of his 9 years. I have been a direct supervisor for Nathan Conche as a sergeant. I've also been his lieutenant as well, and I can speak to Nathan Conche's character and his work ethic. I've seen it firsthand. As the chief mentioned earlier, Nathan Conche is probably my best officer on night shift patrol. He has no internal affairs problems, has never given anybody any problems. I have no complaints coming in for Nathan Conche. As y'all are all aware, he works in our downtown area. That is our most chaotic area. Him and his shift are known for getting over 100 guns, illegal firearms off criminals every year. They go into work. There's gunshots every weekend down there. They run towards the danger. They put tourniquets on people, plug people up, and they do this on a nightly basis. It's not something that's easy to do, and we need people like Nathan to do it. Out of respect for all of your time, everybody on his shift wanted to come down here, but we thought it would be best just for his manager and some of his supervisors to come up and talk a little bit about Nathan Conche. I think it would be a huge disservice to our community in Austin to lose such a fine officer. I'm personally vested to make sure that I can do everything I can to make sure that Nathan keeps his job. And I think it would be, again, a huge detriment to our community and to some of our officers to see such a fine officer lose his license and not be able to do the job he's done. He's got a servant's heart, and that's what he wants to do. He's served our country, he's served our state and our city, and I think we should continue to let him to do so. I appreciate your time.
Good morning. My name is Al Garibay. I'm a sergeant with the Austin Police Department. I've been a sergeant for approximately 14 years. And I can honestly say that I have the privilege that I was Nate's corporal and sergeant on and off times. And it's been great having him on my shift. He really brings the shift together. Just to recap, he has a true, genuine passion when dealing with the mental health community. I've seen him on the ground. He truly loves being a police officer. Not to mention, they call him the Mexican Elvis. He just has that connection with people. When they see him, the homeless people say, "Hey, look, it's Mexican Elvis," you know. So they relate to them. And I believe when a community relates to somebody, that's important. He's our senior officer on the shift. He truly, every time he has an update on mental health updates, he goes out of his way to make sure that the whole shift is aware of the updates so we can be well prepared to deal with the mental health crisis that we have. To speak a little bit about his personal life, like he mentioned, he had 3 kids, 3 very successful kids at that. He travels 2 hours to and from work every day. His dedication is obvious. Did he make a mistake? Of course, right? But that was a mistake he did when he was younger, and he did something from this mistake, which I think is a true representation of a true role model. He became somebody, and I greatly respect you for that. We miss him. The shift, like my lieutenant said, everybody wanted to be here, but we're here to support him, and I hope it'll be a great mistake if we don't see him on the street. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. My name is Brett McGill. I'm a sergeant with the Austin Police Department. I've been an officer for about 19 years in Austin. There's been a lot said today about how wonderful Officer Conche is as far as with the mental health and his service to the department when it comes to the community. But you also don't see the aspect of the impact that he has with the younger officers. And what I mean by that is when Nate shows up to work, He always has a smile on his face. He's happy to be there. And he never rides alone. Anytime that he's going to I got a car by myself, there is a junior officer that is willing to jump in the car with him because he has so much to offer with his knowledge and experience to show those officers how to handle situations. He helped one officer one night on a stabbing. I'll never forget a guy that got stabbed 19 times. And he helped this young officer talk it through and what they did. And they were able to save that man's life long enough for him to say goodbye to his wife. I cannot stress to you the importance that he gives to young officers. And not only to young officers, but to myself, as well as you heard Sergeant Garibay and Lieutenant Jusla speak. The determination of him to drive 5 hours, basically, every day, from South San Antonio to Austin, every day of work, and showing up and always, hey, how's it going, guys? Shaking everybody's hand, making sure that they feel important. That's the type of person that Nate is, and the type of officer that we need within Austin, not only with the community, but within our department. I thank the commission very much for its time. Thank you.
Let me ask the commissioners, if you do have a question, if you could state who you would like to respond to the question, that would be appreciated. I'm going to start, though, with John, and do you have any additional comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, once you've heard all of the testimony and all the witnesses, I wanted to just give you everyone an overview of, based on the earlier conversation, what I prefaced this portion of the meeting with. Just so everyone's clear, in a normal situation, of deferred disposition for a third-degree felony would be a permanent disqualifier. However, in this case, as you see the chief's letter and also in his testimony, in 1989 Officer Conche received the deferred adjudication for burglary of a vehicle, 1989. And again, as the chief's letter shows, importantly, in 1994, the legislature itself reduced the offense to a Class A. That's what puts this case in the particular posture it is before you today. Otherwise, no one would meet normal, regular, minimum standards. However, again, I want to emphasize, in 1994, the legislature downgraded the offense from a third-degree felony to a Class A misdemeanor. Obviously, Officer Conche was able to enlist in the Navy after that. And then also you'll notice in your materials, in 2014 is when it became licensed. That's how this became to TCOLE's attention, was through an audit at the Austin Police Department. We were notified, and as a result, as you also see in there, we initiated a cancellation action against Officer Conche's license based on the 1989 deferred adjudication for third-degree felony. However, in response to the chief's letter and his briefing, and looking at the way the legislature had changed the statute, that makes Officer Conche eligible to have a waiver filed on his request. Procedurally, that's how this is before you today. Are there any questions on any of that?
Any questions for any of the speakers? Go ahead.
Chief, if you don't mind for a second.
Yes, Commissioner.
So, I'm just trying to figure out how we got here on this. You guys were the ones doing the audit, right? You were going back through and fixing everything up, and that's how this came to be.
Correct.
And got brought to your attention. Do you feel this was just oversight during the process, or from your perspective?
So from our perspective, or when we went back and looked, it was disclosed during Officer Conche did disclose the arrest in his background history statement. It was disclosed to the background investigator, and that background investigator disclosed it all the way up his chain of command. All of the folks involved in that are retired. And so understanding exactly why the decision, a decision like that to either overlook or overrule would have had to have come to the chief. I don't know what the reasoning was behind it. And of course, no one who's at the academy now or in recruiting or on executive staff knew anything about this until it was discovered in the audit and we disclosed. Having said that, I think that it truly matters that we've seen such a successful career to this point, and because of all the reasons that were stated, I think a waiver was appropriate.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
While we have you up here, Chief, I just want to say we understand that you're now conducting an audit across the whole agency to catch any of these mistakes or things that might have happened, prior to your tenure. So I imagine that that's taking a while to get through all that, but we certainly appreciate that you're taking the proactive approach of going back and doing that and not letting things come up just on their own.
Absolutely. Yeah, we commissioned that audit, and I believe that it's just about done. To my knowledge, we haven't found any other employee, sworn or civilian, that it would jeopardize their TCOLE license, anything in their backgrounds. But I want to, of course, let that process run it and then provide a report to the commission.
Commissioner?
This is a question for John. So exactly what are our options today? Can you clarify once again for me, please?
Certainly. Commissioners, you can consider what's been submitted to you. You can consider, obviously, what you've heard today. Your options are, I give you the general options, and obviously a motion can go any direction it wants to, but essentially, if there is an action to approve the waiver, then Officer Conche the cancellation action will be removed against his license, and he will proceed forward as a licensee, fully licensed, assuming all continuing education is kept up and his license is active. That's option if you choose to approve the waiver. If you don't approve the waiver, or there is no motion, or there's no action at all, then the cancellation action based on the 1989 deferred disposition will continue on and to cancel Officer Conche's license.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, this is for John. I guess what I'm trying to wrap my head around is this was a felony of the third degree.
Correct.
And just by legislature, they lowered it. So are we in a position, and this may not be something we can answer today, but we have other laws that are lowered. Now even though when they committed it, it was that, I guess I'm not understanding why it's considered a Class A waiver.
No, that's a good
even
question.
though at the time he committed it. And I know that when we, coming from an academy aspect, we look at those face value. And if it's a third degree when they committed it, we tell them, sorry, you can't. There's no, well, it's an A now. Well, we're sorry, it was a third degree when you committed it.
Certainly. The first thing to remember is anytime that if this were a felony conviction, there's one absolute prohibition related to criminal dispositions under Chapter 1701 has been given from the legislature to the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. If a person is convicted of a felony offense, TCOLE may not issue them a license. Any other criteria set other than that is up to the commission. And the reason that is important, because in this case, if this were obviously a felony conviction, as is our rules state, if you've ever been convicted of a felony, it will always be a felony conviction, no matter what. If it's been downgraded to a Class C misdemeanor, it doesn't matter. Now, that's by rule. That's what, that's very specific in our own rules, that only applies to felony convictions. This case, we have a felony deferred. Now, obviously, I think you're correct in saying it's hard to say what the future looks like, but however, as far as license, for an academy or a department, whatever the case is, as far as the waiver process for TCOLE, this is a pretty limited set of circumstances and a pretty unique set of circumstances. However, with that being said, we're talking about licensure from the state perspective and what the minimum standards are, but this would at least only apply to a deferred situation, obviously one where a waiver was requested.
Commissioner.
So I'm going to disagree a little bit with what our counsel is saying, even though he is our counsel. Just as I'm reading the rule, and this is based on what you were talking about, Jan, and the concerns there. I absolutely agree with John that because it's a deferred disposition, that gives us some flexibility here for a waiver to come forward. I think our rule in 211.30, that's the chief administrator responsibilities for bringing forward those Class A and Class B waivers, is silent to this because, you know, when we create these rules, we can't contemplate every single situation that's going to come up. And so here's a situation in my 8 years on the commission, I've never seen this before, but I think our rule is silent to this issue that you're bringing up, which I went back and forth with absolutely, just like I know you did. You know, what is the rule? What does it say? It was a third-degree felony at the time. It seems like that's what it was and what it should be. Ultimately, just speaking for myself, I came to the conclusion that it would be this situation. He would be eligible to bring the chief to bring this waiver request because, again, I'm looking at typically in federal law, and we do go retroactively if things have been changed and change individual sentences. And that's, you know, I haven't practiced a lot of state law in a while related to criminal law. I'm doing exclusively federal now, but they're very harsh with the feds, and the guidelines are really harsh. But there is this exception in federal law where there is a retroactive event that occurs. And so we do have people in custody with the Bureau of Prisons that then are able to reduce sentences based on a change by the legislature. So for me, I went through this analysis and decided, okay, just by fortune or misfortune of when he happened to get this conviction, had it been 5 years later, even though he's a little older, he would be eligible to come before us requesting a waiver. So my conclusion is that our rule is actually silent to this. I think it is an equitable result. It's not something that's so harsh just based on were he born a few years later or committed this a few years later, then he would be eligible to be before us. That being said, ultimately, it is up to the commission to decide based on all the information we have before us. Now we get to, for me, our usual question: do we want to grant the waiver or not? But I do believe that I will agree with John here that it is appropriate to bring the question to us. So now what's on the table is, are we willing to grant it or not make a motion at all on the issue?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
it's my understanding that Mr. Conchi served honorably in our military. The Austin Police Department apparently actively recruited him. You know, there's a saying or a thought or a feeling that when law enforcement, being a cop, police officer, gets in your blood, it's hard to get rid of. That he didn't ask for that; it was given to him. Just my thoughts. And he apparently disclosed everything when he applied after he was recruited, and I think we should consider this.
Commissioner?
Okay, all that being said, now considering the waiver that's before us, you all in the audience don't know this, but in our packets, we received well over 300 pages of information related to this waiver. We often receive a lot of background information, not typically over 300 pages, but nonetheless, I know the entire commission took great time and attention to reviewing everything that was brought before us. And some of that came from the chief and Mr. Conchi putting that together, but also I do want to thank the staff for putting absolutely everything in the packet that we could possibly think of or want. And the investigation done by Sergeant Marina and TJ was very thorough, and I appreciate the work that you did in putting that all together and bringing it before us. Because we have so much information to look at, that it's actually what makes the job very challenging, and I think everyone's going back and forth. I don't want to speak for everyone, but it seems everyone has really gone back and forth, and I'm not sure decisions are made prior to coming in here today and hearing the testimony and everything that was brought before us. On one hand, we have what appears to be a stellar career by Officer Conchi, 20 years in the U.S. Navy, retiring honorably as a senior chief petty officer. Various Navy commendation medals. Moving on with APD, having various commendations there, ribbons. Obviously, you have great support by your fellow officers in your department, and your chief is putting his name and reputation on the line to travel here and to ask for this in your behalf. And that says a lot. We do have, on the other hand, a lot of information that was brought to us that is troubling and concerning, again, from my perspective. We do have a couple offenses that were committed, granted, in your youth. One was at 14, one at 17. They are crimes involving moral turpitude, and that's not something that I take lightly. In addition to that, we have the records from the couple of federal cases that have gone forward. We have in our materials the complaints, the answers, the responses, the motions for summary judgment, all of this information that is in there. And it was, again, thank you to staff, very thorough, but like I said, very concerning as well, because now we're not looking at conduct that was done as a teenager, we're looking at conduct as a grown man and as a sworn officer. Ultimately, those two cases were dismissed with prejudice, and Judge Pittman did, in the motion for summary judgment, make a finding, again, it's related to the summary judgment, that a use of force was objectively unreasonable by you, Mr. Conchi. We don't have the benefit of reviewing the actual videos or any of those things, and our job up here is not to relitigate the matter. There was that finding. I certainly respect what the federal judge's finding was. However, knowing that that ruling was made in a motion for summary judgment, that signals to me that were the case brought before a jury, we could have very different results ultimately. At the end, the case was dismissed with prejudice, so meaning it's not ever coming back. I want you to know that, again, this is a very unique situation, and there is a lot to weigh here. And there's a lot in your favor, but we also had a lot of things that were not favorable to you in making our decision. I thank you for putting this together and coming before us, and know that the ultimate decision that we make is made, it's not made easily by us, and thank you both again.
Yeah, Commissioner.
For me, I can only speak for myself. I do appreciate your drive, your tenacity, and the things that your colleagues shared about you. And I can also appreciate that you changed your life from a youth to today. But I also would like to echo what my colleague, Commissioner Perez, just shared. I found a lot of the information that we received concerning and questionable as well, because these are more recent events. So it definitely is not an easy decision to make today, especially coming in as a new commissioner, but I understand that this is a new situation for the entire commission, so it's new for all of us, essentially. And but I also wanted you to know on both sides that, you know, thank you for your service to our country. There are lots of admirable qualities that I can see within you and from what people have shared about you. But there definitely are concerns with character that I also noticed in the documents that we received. But thank you for also being here today and bringing this forth.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one question, another question for John. So we received all of this information, and it seems like, in a way, I mean, I'm not totally sure here, but it seems like we received all of this information about a particular individual, and we're supposed to consider all of it in our decision, even though the decision is essentially being made about something that happened in the past. Am I correct in understanding that?
That's correct, Commissioner Lavon Dixon. What the aim is it's always been the practice. Anytime there's a waiver request, unfortunately, there's times that waivers have been set on the agenda in the past. I'm not speaking to this particular one, but in the past where an agenda item was set for a waiver, and fortunately, between the time the request was made and the commissioners heard it, it was discovered that the person that was being, waiver was being requested on behalf of had another criminal offense, a variety of reasons that would have at least come onto the radar of the commissioners. This information is gathered for the purpose of totality, so all circumstances, so there's no surprises. It's been long-standing practice that there is going to always be, if you'll look in your packet, this material, it went through the credentialing division, it went through the enforcement division, it goes through the legal division. It's not something that's, as Commissioner Burris discussed earlier, it's not something that we take lightly. It's done very deliberately, very methodically, and again, that's why even though you see there was a cancellation act file in this case, there's also a waiver investigation file, which you'll see consisted, what the report was in there. Again, it's for the purpose of providing as much and as complete information to the commissioners as possible, so there's not a surprise after the fact, or again, so there's no surprises either during or after the fact, certainly. Did that answer your question?
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe it did, yes, thank you.
And normally we would have the offense that occurred 20 years ago or 10 years ago, or whenever it was, and we would have the police reports, we'd read that. That was a little challenging here, given how old the offense was, and the records were kind of tough, but they were able to kind of get them and write them out for us as well. So typically we're looking at that, and we're looking at, what has this person done with their life since then, and they'll tell us, this is what they're interested in doing and why they want to be an officer. This is kind of combining a couple different things, though, this time, in that we have this. We typically we're not in a situation where the person has been acting as an officer for years. That's not usually the way this goes. It's the person is wanting to begin a career in law enforcement, and they're telling us why. Again, here we have the unique situation where we have some records since he has been serving. By and large, it seems it's been a stellar career. We do have these lawsuits, though, to take into consideration at this point, and that's not something we've ever had previously. For me, what I'm balancing is we have these records, and I reviewed them. Ultimately, they were both dismissed with prejudice, and clearly we can tell that there is some sort of an agreement by the parties that was reached. But that's where we are.
And I do understand that. I guess the challenge today is that, this wouldn't be brought forth, all of this information wouldn't be brought forth to the commission if they had not done an internal audit to look at their own systems and their own documents and what that looks like. And I guess also with Officer Conche, that he did disclose it in the beginning. Yeah, this is definitely a challenging situation to have to look at all of that. And so when you say something is dismissed from a legal standpoint, those cases would never be tried again, even though they're dismissed with prejudice. Okay, thank you. I believe all my questions are answered.
Do you have anything else, John?
I don't.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I would like to make the motion to approve the waiver for Officer Nathan Conche.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Flott, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and do a roll call vote, if you would, please.
Commissioner Kim Lamo. Commissioner Jason Huster.
Aye.
Commissioner Janet Adkins.
Nay.
Commissioner Patricia Burris.
Aye.
Commissioner Ron Hood.
Aye.
Commissioner Martina Lamont Dixon.
Yes.
Commissioner Justin Berry.
Abstain.
Commissioner Mario Lascano.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last commissioner?
Commissioner Mario Lascano.
He is absent.
Did I miss somebody?
Commissioner Griffiths.
My vote is aye.
I've already got you as aye. Okay, Commissioner Kim Lamo.
Aye. And I believe everyone has voted, so the motion passes. Officer Conche, congratulations to you. You've been given an opportunity to continue to serve your community. I would take this as a second chance. And at least on behalf of myself, I can't speak for my other commissioners, but I will challenge you to continue to serve with honor and integrity, passion, and the commitment that we've heard today. And also challenge that you continue to make a difference to your community and to this profession, and that you serve your chief and your department and your community with honor. So I congratulate you and also Chief Chacon and the Austin Police Department. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for traveling here from Austin to speak today. We appreciate it very much. Okay, we are going to move back to agenda item number 2, which I have to apologize. I did not have my reading glasses on earlier in the meeting, and that's going to be the approval of the minutes from the August 4th commission meeting. Do we have a motion?
We already did that. I made
Did
the
we do-
motion and Griffiths and
Okay.
Atkins second.
I'll take the blame on that. I must have missed it, and, well, at least we know, we're making sure everybody's staying on their toes up here.
I thought I was having a breakdown or something because I thought we had voted on that, but I thought, okay, it must have been one of the other meetings that ran together there. So, so we will move on to agenda item number 5, which is to discuss and take action on the proceedings for revocation, suspension, and other disciplinary actions. And we have with us today Robert Savage from the Office of the Attorney General. The floor is yours, please, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. As you've said, my name is Robert Savage with the Attorney General's Office, and I'm standing in today for your usual AAG, Raymond Winter, who unfortunately couldn't be here. But that's correct. The next item is the enforcement docket and related matters. And I believe Interim Executive Director Beecham will give a brief recap of the items for your consideration.
Thank you, Robert. For the benefit of everybody in the audience and everybody in attendance, the new commissioners, today what we'll do is I'll give a brief overview before we go into each individual case, essentially what each category that we're going to be walking through and what those are and why you have them before you today. First, Mr. Savage will give you the specific case for your motions, discussions, et cetera. Default suspension orders are a suspension order that's been sent out on behalf of the executive director. In this case, it was for fraudulent, deceitful means of obtaining training. The petition was sent out to suspend the licensee's license. The licensee failed to answer within 20 days a response in order to initiate a hearing at the State Office of Administrative Hearing. As a result, under TCOLE rules, a default suspension order has been presented to you, and I'll let Robert present the actual case, or at least allow you to have the motion and the discussion.
Thank you. The default suspension order on your agenda today is Sean Rainwater. In that matter, the Executive Director initiated a license action against Mr. Rainwater after determining that he violated Commission standards relating specifically to the submission of training reports. Additional information is contained in your packet. Mr. Rainwater failed to answer the petition, and the Executive Director recommends for your consideration a 90-day suspension against Mr. Rainwater.
Commissioners, any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we accept the Executive Director's recommendation for a default suspension order for Sean Rainwater.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Mr. Savage.
The next matter on your agenda is default revocation order. Hopefully I'm not stealing the thunder from Interim Executive Director Beecham, but effectively these are matters that are in which the Executive Director has initiated proceedings to obtain a revocation order against these individuals, and the individuals did not respond to the allegations. The first of these individuals is Melissa Escalon. Ms. Escalon was non-compliant with required continuing education requirements on 3 occasions. Given her non-compliance, the Executive Director initiated a license revocation action. Ms. Escalon, as noted, failed to answer the petition, and the Executive Director now recommends the revocation of Ms. Escalon's license.
Do we need to take these individually? Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the Executive Director's recommendation for a default revocation order for Melissa Escalon.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
The next individual before you, Commissioners, is Howard Haber. Mr. Haber was also non-compliant with required continuing education on 3 occasions. Given his non-compliance, the Executive Director initiated a revocation action against Mr. Haber, who failed to answer. The Executive Director also recommends revocation of Mr. Haber's license.
Madam Chair.
Any questions, comments? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the Executive Director's recommendation for a default revocation order for Howard Haber.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Aye.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes.
The next individual before you, Commissioners, is Gregory Paris. Mr. Paris was convicted or placed on community supervision for official oppression and assault causing bodily injury, both Class A misdemeanors. Executive Director initiated a license revocation action based on the commission of an offense that was directly related to the duties and responsibilities of the office. Mr. Paris failed to answer the petition, and the Executive Director now recommends for your consideration revocation of Mr. Paris's license.
Any questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the Executive Director's recommendation for a default revocation order for Gregory Paris.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
The next default revocation order for your consideration is Bruce Thomas. Mr. Thomas was non-compliant with his required continuing education requirements on 3 occasions. The Executive Director accordingly initiated a license revocation action. Mr. Thomas failed to answer, and the Executive Director now recommends revocation of Mr. Thomas's license.
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion we accept the Executive Director's recommendation for a default revocation order for Bruce Thomas.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
The next matter on your agenda is agreed revocation waiver. This is an individual specifically whom the Executive Director initiated a license revocation action, after which the individual agreed with the waiver, or executed a waiver with respect to revocation of license. This individual is Tammy Curry, who was non-compliant also with continuing education requirements on 3 occasions. As referenced, the Executive Director initiated a license revocation action, and Ms. Curry agreed to license revocation. The Executive Director recommends acceptance of Officer Curry's agreed license revocation.
Questions? Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the agreed revocation for Tammy Curry.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
The next matter on the agenda is likely fresh on your minds given our previous topic on the agenda with respect to cancellation of licenses. This involves an individual who faced a cancellation action given not having all the requisite basics that are essential for licensure. The individual specifically is Robert Crabtree. Mr. Crabtree completed the basic peace officer course in 2020. However, he had previously been convicted or placed on community supervision for Class A misdemeanors. The Executive Director determined that Mr. Crabtree was ineligible for enrollment and initiated a cancellation action. Mr. Crabtree subsequently failed to answer that action, and the Executive Director recommends canceling Mr. Crabtree's basic peace officer course certification.
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the default cancellation order of Robert L. Crabtree's license.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
The next 2 matters are agreed suspension orders. These are individuals who had faced petitions for license suspension, after which they agreed to a proposed set of conditions regarding suspension of their license, and these proposed suspension orders are being submitted to you today for your consideration. The first of these individuals is John Floyd. Mr. Floyd was convicted or placed on community supervision for the offense of driving while under the influence of alcohol, a Class B misdemeanor. The Executive Director filed a license action seeking suspension of Mr. Floyd's license. After negotiation with the Executive Director's staff, Mr. Floyd agreed to an order that would suspend his license for 4 years, fully probated and backdated to June 26, 2018. The agreed suspension order is contained in your packet. The Executive Director recommends that you accept the proposed order suspending Mr. Floyd's license as stipulated by the agreed suspension order.
Questions? Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the agreed suspension order for John Floyd.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
The next individual before you is Stephen Phipps. Mr. Phipps was non-compliant with continuing education requirements on 3 occasions. The executive director initiated a license revocation action against Mr. Phipps for violating the commission's continuing education requirements. Incidentally, after the initiation of proceedings, Mr. Phipps was elected constable for B County Constable Precinct 3, an office that he currently holds. This matter proceeded to a SOA hearing. A proposal for decision has not been issued. After negotiation with the executive director's staff, Mr. Phipps agreed to an order that would suspend his license for 1 year. He would still hold his constitutionally elected position, of course. The executive director recommends that you accept the proposed order suspending Mr. Phipps' license as stipulated by the agreed suspension order contained in your packet.
I do have some discussion on this. This is another incredibly unique situation.
Yes.
In this case, if we agree that his license will be suspended for a year, I know there's, and I forget the exact timing, but they do have to be commission license. Everything has to be up to date at a certain point from when you've been elected. So what are the dates regarding that?
Always remember, and it's a great question, and I want to preface it with why this is a suspension versus a revocation. And as Robert stated, this particular licensee they became constable, and under statute, a constable we can only revoke a constable's license for offenses that are criminal offenses that are directly related to the duties and responsibilities of their office, and also for felonies. As a result, any regulatory scheme, i.e. TCOLE will revoke your license for 4 reprimands, 3, or any of our continuing education, in this case 3 continuing education violations, is subordinate to the statute.
Right.
So I just want to make sure everybody's understanding that part of it. But in response to your question, Commissioner Burris, a constable has 270 days from the day they take office to become licensed. In this case, obviously, he was licensed as he took office, so that takes him out of the TCOLE removal, for not having that license within a particular time. However, and they still remain to be the constable whether they have a license or not, because they're a constitutionally elected official. Now, keep in mind that locally, a commissioner's court or otherwise always has removal power if they chose to exercise it for a variety of reasons that are beyond licensure by TCOLE. So I hope that answers your questions, at least regard to our ability to take a license, or what time period they have to be a license with TCOLE.
Oh, it absolutely answered the question. Clearly, the fact that he's elected overrules any kind of rule that we would make. I just was unsure regarding the timing, but you answered that with he was already licensed when he took office, and so that that timeline that is no longer an issue.
It wouldn't subject him to removal under 1701 and a removal action either through the county or district attorney or the attorney general's office.
Right. Thanks.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the agreed suspension order for Stephen Phipps.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you. The remaining items on your agenda are for your information only, and no action is required. There's an individual who is subject to statutory revocation, as well individuals who have submitted permanent surrenders of their license. Additional information is included regarding individuals reprimanded, as well as individuals suspended for failing to take required continuing education. Reprimanded for failing to take required continuing education. And that should conclude, hopefully, the enforcement docket.
Okay, we are going to move on to agenda item number 6, which is discuss and take action to propose the readoption of Title 37 of the Administrative Code, Chapters 211 through 229, pursuant to the TCOLE Rule Review Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If this looks familiar, Commissioners, it's because it is. We discussed this and you passed this previously in Odessa. However, I brought that into you in a format and I had titled it as the final adoption of our rule review plan versus our proposed final adoption of the rule plan. So what I'm bringing it to you before all today is simply approve it so we can propose it and we can do it through the proper sequencing through the Texas Register for your consideration.
Okay. Any question?
Oh, I'm sorry. So you're asking for posting to the register?
Yes, this is the proposed readoption of our rule review plan and in the action that we took when we review the rules in accordance with the plan.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we post for publication the readoption of Title 37 Texas Administrative Code, Chapters 211 through 229 of the TCOLE Rule Review Plan.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is to discuss and take action on the progress of the strategic plan. For any of you that joined us yesterday for the Commissioners' Workshop, we did have a discussion about that and made the commitment that in coming workshops, we'll continue to build out the performance measures to ensure that we as a commission and the TCOLE staff stay focused on our goals and measure the progress. I don't know that we need a motion, but I will open it up for any comments first. Any additional comments? Does anyone feel a need to make a motion, or do we? Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 8, which is to discuss and take action on legislative items to include the exceptional items and performance measures, data information provided by the TCOLE staff, and updates from the TCOLE divisions. Again, in the discussions at the workshop yesterday, we talked about continuing to develop out specific expectations of the TCOLE staff on providing data and information. We've already talked a little bit about the exceptional items. So any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Okay. Does anyone feel a need to make a motion at this point? No. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item number 9, which is to discuss and take action on mandates for the 2023 through 25 continuing education unit, which is under House Bill 3712 of the 87th Legislature. And I'm going to go ahead and defer to Cullen for an update on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a reminder for those in the audience, House Bill 3712, 87th regular session, instructed TCOLE to determine up to 16 hours of the mandated 40 hours of training and specify topics for each two-year training unit. As discussed yesterday in the work session, we are proposing that course 470 or an equivalent, which is trauma-informed sexual assault investigation, available on my TCOLE, be one of the mandates. Just as a reminder, we recommended that course without requirement. This unit, we'd like to catch those who didn't take advantage of that. So if somebody had it, this unit, we would not require it again in the next unit. We would recognize the fact that they had taken that course or an equivalent. The second course we propose is to be developed with our partners at Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, and we're looking at co-developing an officer mental health and wellness course with suicide prevention component, and we hope to both build an IRG, so a regional training provider or proprietary academy could do that course face-to-face if they chose to do so, but we will also make available a online version of that course through the My TCOLE account, so there would not be a tuition attached to it, and it would be readily accessible by all our licensees. So we are proposing those two requirements in the next training unit, in the 23-25 training unit. We'd like to get your approval for that because we've got the design element that we need to go. We would like to have that course live on my TCOLE by September 1, the beginning of the unit. So we would like the commission's approval for those two courses, or any ideas the commission has for other required training.
Do we have any questions?
I would like to just say I definitely am in huge support of both those courses being mandated, especially with prevention of officer suicide and mental health. I mean, just read the headlines, what happened, the nightmare that San Antonio is facing at the moment, the heartache that's taking place there. I think if there's ever a time, now is that time to move forward with mandating that course going forward to help really work on reducing officer suicide and mental health, and showing all the stakeholders that we genuinely care about those that have answered this vocation and this calling, and make sure that we're setting them up for success in their life and in their careers with the resources they need to get that mental health treatment, and knowing where to go, and also providing information on how to guide administrators and supervisors on what to do and how to help that. So I definitely am in full support of this, and thank you all for working on it.
Colin, can you briefly explain how you arrived at these courses?
Yes, ma'am. We sent out a survey to chief administrators, chief sheriffs, constables, because normally that 40 hours of training is oftentimes dictated by the agency to meet agency dilemmas or local issues. And so we wanted to get the chief administrator input. The three most common topics included officer mental health and wellness, and then also suicide prevention. So we believe we can merge those topics into a single training event, and it scored very high. There's certainly been commissioner support for that type of training, a call for that in the past, and we recognize that. But we also wanted to make sure that it was relevant to the chief sheriffs and constables, and it was on their radar. And so that's how we arrived at that topic.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommended courses by our licensing board to make the mandatory, to meet the mandates for the 2023 and 2025 continuing education under HB 3712.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We'll move on to agenda item number 10, which is discuss and take action on the process, procedure, and qualifications related to the selection of the next executive director. We have been receiving applications. We have had an opportunity to go through and discuss those. We will be moving forward with setting some interviews of those candidates. I will say that the posting will remain open until an executive director is selected. So any other comments by my colleagues? Okay. We'll move on to agenda item number 11, which is to receive public comment on any topic. Please understand that this will be without any action, and I have a card for Lieutenant Elijah Mink of Round Rock. Lieutenant, are you here? Okay. I guess we will not have comments by Lieutenant Mink this morning. Agenda. Agenda item number 12 is executive session. We will not be going into executive session today, which nullifies agenda item number 13, which is returning. So we have agenda item number 14, which is adjourning this meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. I do appreciate, before we take a vote, I will say that I do appreciate those of you that elected to stay. We very much appreciate this. Staff spends a lot of time and effort putting these meetings together. They work very hard throughout the year. You have an incredibly dedicated group of commissioners that also puts in a lot of time and effort. So we do very much appreciate the fact that you are interested enough in this process and how it impacts you to be here today and to stay through the meeting. So thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay. Motion carries.